Hello and welcome to our first prototyping exercise in Figma. So in this tutorial, we're going to be covering just the basics of prototyping and interactions in Figma. Prototyping is a preliminary visual mockup that looks like a real app or website and demonstrates the app's fundamental design and function but does not contain working code. For the intents and purposes of this tutorial, prototyping means adding the interactions themselves, such as tap or click functions, to your already designed screens in Figma. So you do need to have designed screens, things to select to add these interactions to in Figma already. For this exercise, we have provided those for you. So I'm going to be walking through some of the basic prototyping functions using this exercise one template that is provided for you in Canvas. So in Figma, I have already opened a copy of the file for the exercise that this tutorial goes along with. And we're just going to start adding some basic prototyping and interactions to these elements. Now, so far we have been working in the design space of Figma. Now that we have our design screens and things to actually prototype with, we're going to switch from the design tab to the prototype tab. So we can just click over here. So if we don't have anything in our documents selected, what we're going to see here, first of all, is the device that we're working with, as well as the model. So, right now I have this set to be on an iPhone 14 in midnight, which I suppose is probably black. So we see a little preview, and this is how we'll actually be able to preview our prototype. We'll open it in a new tab and actually be able to click through on the screen, and it's mocking it up for us like it's on an actual phone. So once we select a frame or an element on our screen, we'll actually see different options show up in the prototyping tab, including flow starting behavior, interactions, and scroll behavior. First, I just want to talk about scroll behavior. The overflow refers to any content that may fall outside of the phone or device that you've actually selected to look at this on. So if we have our overflow set to no scrolling, that's going to keep everything nice and straight in a nice column when we scroll down through the page. If we were to change this and select horizontal, vertical, or both directions, that might mean that the whole screen might shift as you're kind of moving around the space. So depending on the use of your app or screens, this can change your overflow selection. The flow starting point that we see at the top here, this actually indicates where the interactivity begins when somebody opens your prototype. So if you were to send me or another prof or a client a link to your prototyped app or screens, this is where it would open to. So we do want to make sure that we select a good flow starting point so that if you were to share this as a link, you wouldn't accidentally just open it up on some random page, but actually where you're intending the user to start interacting with it from. For this tutorial, we're going to make the home page our flow starting point. So since I have that frame selected here, I'm just going to click the plus sign and add a starting point here, flow one. So I can go ahead and rename that to make it clear for myself. And it will update over here in our document. Now you can add multiple starting points. For instance, if you had different flows within a single document, now I have broken down these exercises into individual pages. So they each really have their own flow. You don't need to necessarily worry about that in regards to this exercise, but it is something that you need to consider whenever you are working in Figma. So when you add an interaction, what you want to do is select the frame or element on the page that you want to be the trigger point. So whatever you want the user to use to trigger this interaction. I'm going to select this activity icon here on the home page. And what I want is my interaction for somebody to tap on this button. It's going to take us to the activity page. So to do that, I'm going to use the blue plus sign here. I can also add this over in the prototype panel under interactions. So this little blue plus sign appears. I'm going to click and drag that over to the activity page or frame and let that go. When I let go of the arrow that appears, I see all these different settings show up. So the first thing that I want to select is my trigger, which is the action the user performs to trigger the interaction. So there are a variety of triggers to choose from, but we'll mainly be using the ones in this top section here. So on tap, which is the same as on click, on drag, while hovering, while pressing, or key or gamepad. So if you use a key on your keyboard or something. There's also, mouse enter or leave. So what it can sense whether the mouse is entering or leaving a frame, or touch down or touch up. So the next step is to determine what action occurs when the user triggers it. So this could be navigating to another frame, opening an overlay like a mobile keyboard that might slide up when somebody's filling out a form, scrolling to another section of the same frame you're on, and more. You can see there's a lot of options in here. Within each of these options, you'll have settings you can customize further, including how quickly the interactions happen and transitions like dissolve. They have a smart animate option that's really fun, that just automatically moves things around on the page. There's also, move in, move out, pushing things around the page, and more. So really the best way to figure out what all of these different settings do is just to dive in and start playing around and exploring, fine-tuning all the settings and seeing what you can do with them. To edit interactions, what you'll do is you can actually just select the arrow, which indicates where an interaction is occurring. If you just click on it, then the settings will open back up and you can make any changes that you want. It will also show up over in the prototype panel, where you can also edit the settings. All right, so now I have added one prototype or one interaction here. From the home screen, I can now click on the activity button to get to the activity screen. But to actually preview that, what we want to do is come up here and click the play button in the top right corner, and it will open in a new tab, a mock-up. You see here, this is the device I selected in my prototyping settings, that iPhone 14 in the black. So this looks like it's on a phone. And now if I come anywhere in here, and click somewhere that does not have an interaction, we'll see that interaction glow in blue. So now we know that I can click on that button and it does take me to the activity page. Now, we at this point do not have a way to get back to the home screen. So depending on how your prototype will need to be used, you would at this point continue adding interactions. For instance, if you're creating an app with more, with like a very specific walkthrough flow in mind, such as like a login flow, or accessing a certain page, navigating to a certain page, you can build your app and the prototyped elements to work just for that instance, since you don't need it to be accessible or used in any other way. If you're gathering more user feedback to test on an app's potential functionality, more like on a wider level, then you would need to consider any and all ways that that user might interact with your prototype. So this can end up, turning into a fairly large project that would involve a lot more prototyping and be a more advanced user experience focused project. To remove interactions, very simple. You can either come over into your prototyping panel. If you select your interaction here, you can just click the minus sign to remove it, or click and drop that blue arrow just in, blank space. As long as it's not connected to an element, you let it go, it will disappear, and now our interaction is gone from our panel over here. Okay, so those are the very basics of prototyping in Figma. And the challenge with these exercises is going to be to take what I've just walked you through, and apply that to this series of exercises that have these step-by-step instructions. So you'll need to make a copy of this template in Figma. Please do not work directly onto the original template. Make a copy, and then you will go ahead and share a link with me in Canvas as your final submission. And you can just click that share button at the top and then copy link, making sure that settings allow me access, etc. And make sure that you do set your home or your flow start point in the place where you want it to be, so that it opens where I should start walking through these screens. All right, so good luck and onward.